Now we'll continue on and talk about iterable unpacking. So what is an iterable anyway? We haven't been using this term much. An iterable is really just anything that you can iterate over. You guys have been using them all along. In fact, many times in this class, I've been calling them a sequence. I say a sequence. Really, oftentimes when I've said sequence, iterable is a better fit. Because an iterable is really just anything that you can iterate over. And so this is lists, this is sets, tuples, strings, ranges. These are all different things that you can put in, for example, a for loop and iterate over. Now, iterable unpacking is this handy built-in way of Python for unpacking something that has multiple items into individual variable names. And so this here is a common pattern. Maybe you have some coordinates and you want to get the x and the y coordinates individually. Whoops, we should just fix this here. It should be coordinates 1 and 0 and 1 like this, right? So we have our x coordinate and our y coordinate. Iterable unpacking lets you do this same exact thing in a prettier way. So you put separated by commas, variable names, and in fact, enough variable names, one for each item in the iterable that you're trying to unpack. And this, in the same way, we'll go ahead and assign the first item in our iterable to x and the second item in our iterable to y. But let me just point out and show you how this works. But what you need to be careful about. So if I run this, I can print here, print x, print y. And this does indeed print 10 and 23. But what you need to be careful about is this only works when you have the exact right number of variable names on the left side separated by commas as items in the iterable. And so if I add an extra variable here, z, but there's only 2 items in my iterable in this list, well, when I run my code, we get this value error that says not enough values to unpack. Expected 3 got 2. And it's expected 3 because on the left side of our assignment, we have 3 variables separated by commas. And so it's expecting there to be 3 variables inside of this iterable. But actually, there's only 2. The same thing happens the other way. And so here, this will work again because we have 3 and 3. And if I print z, you can see that this will work. Oops. Let's just save this and run this again. Yeah, there we go. Just have to add this additional number here again. And so this does indeed print 10, 23, and 90. But if you want to get just the first 2 numbers out of our coordinates, this won't work. Python doesn't like this. You have to have the same number of variables on the left as you do on the right. So you'd have to put in a dummy variable here, an underscore, for example, or z if you want, but just not use z. So you always have to have the same number of variable names separated by commas on the left side of your assignment as you do the number of elements in your iterable. And this is going to be really handy. One place that this comes up pretty often is with functions where you want to return multiple values. For example, you might remember earlier in the semester we wrote a function that was something like min and max. It would look like this. You give it a list of numbers, and then, sure, we'll assume that the number, the first item in the list will just grab that as the minimum and grab that as the maximum, num0, num0. And then we'll say for num and nums, for each number, if the number that we see is bigger than the maximum so far, we update the maximum. If the number we see is less than the minimum so far, we'll update the minimum. And then you can return these together, just like this, separated by commas. This will actually return as a tuple, but the important thing is that you can now unpack the results of this function into individual variables. So you can have mini comma maxi equal min and max nums, because this returns a comma like multiple things separated by commas, and you can unpack them into multiple variables as a result. Let's show you how this works here. If we come over and run this code, and we'll print mini, print maxi. So yes, our smallest number here is -1, and our largest number here is 10. A question you might have when you're looking at this code is, what is going on here? If you leave out, for return statements in particular, if you want to return multiple things and you put them kind of separated by commas, what Python will actually do is assume that these will be a tuple. And so the tuple there is assumed for a return statement. And now that means that you can, you get back an iterable with 2 items in it, and that's why you can unpack it. And so we can actually just take a look at the result explicitly. If I print the type of results and I print res, we can see what type is returned here. And you can see that it is a tuple that is returned. So min num comma max num becomes a tuple that is -1 and 10. And then we're able to unpack that tuple into mini and maxi by using this tuple iterable unpacking. Mini and print maxi. We get -1 and 10. Now, with that in mind, let's take a look at dictionary comprehensions. And you'll see in a second why that tuple unpacking is useful for this. These dictionary comprehensions are super similar to list comprehensions. It's just now, instead of brackets on the outside, we have curly braces, open curly brace, close curly brace, because this is a dictionary. And the expression here is actually made up of 2 parts. The thing that gets added to our dictionary has a key expression, colon, and then a value expression. Because that's exactly what it would look like if we were creating a new dictionary. We would normally have key 1, value 1, key 2, value 2, so on and so forth. And so for the same way here, we can write a key expression, a value expression for each element in a sequence if some conditional is true. Again, optional to have this conditional here. But you should read this as English. Compute the key expression and associated value expression for each element in the sequence if some conditional is true. And so let's look at an example. That powers of 2. So 2 to the power of 1 is 2. 2 to the power of 2 is 4. We saw how we compute that with a list comprehension, but maybe we want to actually map from the power of 2, like the thing that we're raising 2 to the actual power of 2, so 2 to the I. Well, we can use a dictionary for that, and we do the exact same thing as we did in the list comprehension, except now inside of we have, instead of brackets for a list, we have curly braces for a dictionary. And this expression bit at the front is made up of 2 parts. There's the key expression, which is going to be just I, and the value expression, which is the power, which is that power of 2. And if we come over here and write this, powers of 2, the 2 to the power of I, for I in range, now let's just say 5. So we print powers of 2, we'll see what this is. Yeah, and we get 0. So 2 to the power of 0 is 1. 2 to the power of 1 is 2. 2 to the power of 2 is 4. 2 to the power of 3 is 8. And 2 to the power of 4 is 16. Very similar. Now I'll show one other thing here, which is where our iterable unpacking will come in. a dictionary object has this .items method that's very handy. It returns a list of key value tuples in the dictionary. So you can see here, this is a dictionary that has a name and a grade, Alex 90, Sarah 95, Avi 87. Grades.items gives us back a list, where each element in the list is itself a tuple, where the tuple, the first item in the tuple is the key, and the second item in the tuple is the value. Looks kind of similar to a dictionary, but it's not really mapping from the key to the value anymore. This is just a list of tuples. Well, this is useful because when we take this with iterable unpacking, we can now access both the key and the value of some other dictionary inside of this dictionary comprehension. Because this for k comma v in grades.items, we can use the tuple unpacking right here, the iterable unpacking right here. Each item in grades.items, well, instead of just giving kind of a variable name here, we can have multiple variable names separated by commas to unpack each thing that we iterate over in grades.items. And so now if, for example, you want to filter down to the grades of students whose names start with an A, we can keep the same key colon value, so the same name and grade, for each key and value in grades.items if the first letter of the key, so the first letter of the name, is the letter A. And when you run this code, you get Alex 90 and Avi 87, because Sarah gets filtered out because this conditional is false for her. It's false for her.